Hello and welcome to another episode of the Construction Corner Podcast. I'm Dylan, I'm your host. And on this episode, we have just Dylan in his car. Guys, I, like Matt, have been just crazy busy. And this is, partially the only time that I have for a podcast. Partially, I just haven't been as much content as I've been putting out to get on a mic and really talk about what's going on in the world, what's happening in construction, AI, technology, all this stuff. I kind of got to be feeling it a little bit. You know, with Matt, I can feed off his energy. And if you guys have really done any of this stuff, you know how much energy that it really takes to put out a good episode, have that upbeat, positive energy. And, I just ran a 10K. So I'm feeling pretty good. One of the things that I've found in my life over the past, let's say, decade being in the working world, or really over that, but since I started doing long distance events, which my first long distance event was in 2012. So I've been doing distance events since 2012. I ran my first marathon in April of 2012. First Ironman in October of 13. So, and then my first ultra in July of 2017. So, been doing this a little while, and I have found through the years that my successive increase in distance sport, right, be that marathon, triathlon, whatever, has also increased my income. And there's a few reasons I think for this. One, especially in my 20s, was mostly because it somewhat limited my drinking and going out and partying and all that kind of stuff, because I knew I had to get up and run in the morning. And when you have to get up and go run 10, 15 miles, you don't want to feel like complete garbage. And while I did that some of the time and could recover, I cannot do that these days. And now being on 75 hard and doing those programs with prolonged bouts of not drinking and really just staying on the program and gaining momentum, I've found how important it is to stay on the program. And I'm not going to talk to you about all that today, but I do want to keep reinforcing like how much momentum matters, how much those positive things matter. At night we get bored, and boredom has killed more people, more businesses, more things than anything, right? It's a man who can be alone with his thoughts that greatness happens. Like, I actually read something here recently about Isaac Newton, and a lot of his discoveries actually happened during the plague in London. So for like 20 months, everybody basically had to go to their country homes. Like, Cambridge shut down, and they sent everybody like away, which actually spread the plague faster through the countryside. But what happened in that isolation while Cambridge was shut down is that, one of two things. Most of the scientists either the vast majority of them didn't do anything, right? They couldn't cope with the boredom. They just got fat, lazy, didn't do much, and really degraded. And on the other side of that, Newton, for those 20 months, took a bunch of textbooks home, read, thought, did a ton of walking, and for the first probably 4 or 5 months, he was like stir crazy, right? Like, what do you do when you're home? You just don't do much. But he really bogged down and got through that like tedium, the boring work, the things that you just don't want to do. But he sat down and did it, thought through a lot of this, what we know today is modern mathematics, right? Geometry, gravity, walked through the apple orchards, which is the whole Apple story that we all hear, right? Apple falling on his head, and he thought of gravity, right? And really came up with that concept. So for a lot of us in like the boredom, the boring work, the day in and day out, the grind, right? A lot of it's just getting through that tedium, those boring, like tedious tasks to get to the other side of things, right? This world that we live in is fast, it's upbeat, high-paced, and when you are used to not being bored, you do a lot of destructive things with it, and typically that is alcohol. Alcohol, drugs, women, whatever it might be for you. gambling. Like there's a ton of addictions that people have. And so like as we think about this, right, those addictions, those bad things that we end up doing, really just hold us back. And a lot of it just stems from boredom, right? We don't know what else to do. So, maybe you go eat, maybe you go drink, maybe you go to strip clubs, whatever it is. Like there are things that you should not be doing, and you would be better off just doing nothing at night for those few hours, being, quote, bored, grabbing a book maybe, right? Something besides that destructive habit to keep you moving forward. And what I also, this leads me to believe in this kind of thought process as, AI is in the news, and we're talking about a lot of that stuff, which, I've been in the automation space now for a few years, and really since 2018. And so with that, like, there's a lot of things that automation helps with, right? Like in taking out the tedious, time-consuming tasks. What automation is not meant for and should not be for is critical thinking, right? Is really taking like the critical thinking skills of an engineer, of an architect, of anybody in construction, and replacing that with a machine. And the simple analogy that I like to use is in driving, right? So in a car, if you drive a Tesla and you've been driving a Tesla, or like in my car, right, I have this, I drive a Honda, and with that, when you turn on your right blinker, there's a camera in the mirror on my right side, and so that image pops up on my center console. And when that happens, right, like I don't have to look in my right mirror, I can look kind of ahead and then see, if there's anybody in my blind spot on my right side, which is kind of cool. And then, you go to a Tesla, which I've only ridden in one, I haven't driven one, but in riding with them, it pings like your whole surroundings, and like you can see everything on this screen, and you're not actually looking at the road, which is just insane. And so you take somebody that has driven a Tesla their whole life, put them in a different scenario, right? Put them in a shitty Kia rental car with like no features, roll up windows, you know what I'm talking about, right? And that they will be a horrible driver. They will be more likely to cause an accident because they do not now have critical thinking skills, because they turned all of their brain power and driving ability over to the car, right? Because their brain doesn't have to think about like collision detection or collision avoidance. Like you get into any car that doesn't have that, or that system malfunctions, you're now likely to be in a collision because your reaction time has been slowed by computers. And this is what we forget or don't even think about when we hand over all this thinking ability to a machine, is that we really lose that ability. Critical thinking, the ability to, see what's going on in the field, unique situations, right, new designs. That is what architects and engineers are meant for. The cookie cutter square building, all walls are parallel, right, or square, all walls are square, no round walls, block, Soviet building, like shit, yeah, sure, robot and machine could design that, automation could do it, we'd circuit it all, lighting would be simple, block walls, all the way around, and call it a day. But that's not what we do, right? Like, not even prisons are built like that. So, like, no windows, no nothing, right? Like, you want architectural features, which is why we design buildings and have people, right, to create new things and new ideas and new thoughts to put out into the world. And so when we don't have that anymore, like, designs become boring, and then why is somebody paying us to create a building and it's a design, right? They want something beautiful, unique, sure, on budget and all that kind of stuff, but we really lose the flair and the flavor of architecture and engineering and like the beauty that we can create in this world. And so when you hand over all this thinking ability to a machine, to somebody else, then you become less valuable, right? And so there is a balance between this, but we can't like throw the baby out with the bathwater, because the reality in construction as a whole, and especially on the design side, but I can argue for all of construction, is that the old timers are aging out, right? We're not bringing enough new people into the industry. We're for sure not doing it in the colleges and universities. Granted, there's a shit ton of architects. On the engineering side, though, it's not as prevalent, especially in the MEP side, right? Like, it's just not as many people going into architecture and engineering. They just don't know about it. And so what we have then, especially on the engineering side, is a lack of, or really all the old people are leaving. We have a lack of new entrants into the industry. We have people that just get burnt out and aren't going to make it, especially like, why would you go to a 4-year school, get a job making 60 grand to draft, right? You don't feel valuable or like you're doing anything or learning anything. You got a menial drafting job, basically, is what all these firms stick new hires into, which again just degrades these very intelligent people over time. And so like, that's not good. Then, so we burn out, you make everybody work 60 hours a week, and never put them on a job site. They never get to see what they're a part of, right? They're behind a desk and a computer, and they don't get to see the industry. They don't get to see a construction site. They don't get to be a part of what we're actually creating in the real world. They just, they put stuff on drawings and ship it out and don't get to see or interact with anybody on site. And that creates a place where you have people not staying in the industry. You have people retiring and aging out. They're not passing on any of that information. And now that everybody's working from home, you can't just stick that young guy next to the old guy in the office, let him learn by osmosis from what, is going on in the field, the anecdotes, the, random bits of information that they get, the meetings that they get to overhear on the phone, right? That's how a lot of people learned, not as like a formal apprenticeship, but like the closest thing that we got to it in engineering, right? That's what an apprenticeship was learning step by step by step. And now in this work from home age, we don't have that type of formal education, right? You need people that are like built for whatever it is, and they stick them in, and you don't get that kind of ad hoc like apprenticeship of like a lot of osmosis going on to get people to learn from you. And what this ends up creating is you have a talent pool of engineers that are overworked. They're, and frankly, in most cases, underpaid. They're burnout, and you have them doing tedious tasks, right? So because you can't hire anybody else, and then it takes years to hire people, which long-term solution is hiring people in, training them up, doing all that stuff. But that takes, 3-4 years before they're really qualified enough to then, kind of do everything on their own. And we can speed that up if they're not just drafting all the time, right? If they're truly learning the trade and the craft and not spending 40 hours a week or 38 hours a week drafting, 2 hours a week learning, then we can actually have some good dialogue and, education to these new hires. So if you take drafting off the table for them, then you allow them to learn engineering and really, what's going on in it, because the drafting is pretty much done. There's some edits and tweaks that have to be done, and that allows everybody to grow. But again, the long-term thing is to hire people in. But to solve this, like, the only way to do it from my perspective, and I've had this for a very long time, and granted, like, whether you want to build this yourself, which will also take you a bunch of years to do, so, good luck, but you're either going to use automation, you're going to hire it out to India, which we all know that takes, 2, 3, 4 iterations. It's frustrating. It's time consuming. Like, you might as well just do it in house, or, that's really it. Or you're just going to do what you're doing, which is work your whole team to death to then, get these drawings out the door. And you're going to do that over and over and over again for every single project forever. And this is really where, like, we end up at, is we have all this work. We have, more and more people wanting projects. We have fewer and fewer people to do them. We have, more demands on us, more quota requirements, more everything. And yet we're not using tools to help us be more productive. Like, we're stuck in this way of doing things that just is not productive, right? And I get, like, not adopting some things quickly. I get not using technology in some ways, just like I talked about with Tesla, right? New shiny, but really degrade your skills, right? Drafting, like, should not be a skill that we value, right? Using Revit, moving things around, circuiting, doing load calculations and mechanical, right? But placing a diffuser or just doing an initial diffuser placement, some initial thermostat placements, and then moving them around, having a conversation, quickly adjusting stuff. That is a value added skill for, your team, right? Like if you get everything done, now you can have a value added skill. You can do more in less time. You can teach people. You do all this stuff, make design decisions quicker. All those pieces that you would not otherwise have on projects. Like I just do not see what's keeping people from investing in stuff like this. And then you might want to even look at, price points and everything. No software is going to be more than a person, right? And then again, at the entry level for an engineer or whatever, you're paying 60, 80 grand minimum for like a new hire out of college, depending on where you are in the country, right? Even if you're talking about a dumb draftsman, you're going to have to spend a lot of engineering hours correcting them. So even if you pay them $20 an hour, it's really going to be time and a half because it's you plus the, engineer, but the engineer's at a weighted, billable rate of 100, right? So like it just doesn't work. Like the math never pencils out in favor of not getting software. So what I'm just aghast that like we want to use technology to increase the skills, the learning, the education of our team members. And in educating our team members, like they're not going to take your job. They're not going to, take things away from you. Like we want to bring up everybody, and we have such a close-minded, like hard line in this industry of not sharing, of hoarding information, of, not telling people what we know, not educating people, not building people up. And I just don't get it. Like I truly don't understand why we don't share information, why we don't help other engineers like get better. I don't know why we don't improve people along the way of, like sharing lessons learned, of doing all these things that we just should be sharing throughout the industry. And so, like, whether it's in your firm, like, you need to do knowledge share, knowledge transfer. I get we don't like documentation, but, like, hey, man, you got to share, like, something, or the old timer's just going to leave, and live the rest of his life on the beach as he should because he put in his time. And, like, I think we just take so much for granted in the knowledge education that, we've learned, and that these old guys really have to share from us. Sure, they don't know how to use Revit. So what? They have so much educate or knowledge, and education from experience that they've learned over 40 years of like how a building goes together, what pitfalls to avoid, like what do we put in contracts, why do we do it, what's the history of the industry, how did things evolve, why do we do things this way, like all those bits and pieces that we frankly like don't allow them to share. They're not on podcasts, like they're just these industry guys that have solved problems, for so long. It's like the maintenance guy at your local hospital that's been there for 30 years or school or whatever. They know the building, they know the plant, they know the facility so well, they know where everything is. And then when those guys retire, and I've seen it happen, like they just retire and leave and, like they'll figure it out, I guess. No one asked me, no one did anything, and nobody cared. Right. And, we're wrapped up so much in what we're doing in our own personal world that we don't think of the firm. We don't think of the people coming behind us. We're not leaving the place better than we left it. We're not bringing people up. And like, if people aren't good enough around us, then you're just like, screw it, man. Like, I don't have time for this. And so you leave the world shittier than you left it. Like one of my great, skills that I have, I'm not the world's best engineer, but I am a great leader of people. And I will share the knowledge that I have, and I will pass it along to people. That's why I was great at leading teams. Like, hey guys, you're better at details than I am. You've been doing this a lot longer. You understand what you're doing, right? I'm a good reviewer. I'm a good critique. I understand technology, like, but I'm not the best engineer. And so when it comes to like doing a lot of stuff, we can all learn from each other. I can learn from you, you can learn from me on different things. And, we have to really take that attitude as we go through this stuff. Age doesn't matter, experience does matter. New perspectives do matter, and old perspectives do matter. Like all this matters. And as we go through a lot of this stuff, like we have to be very cognizant of, are we leaving our work, our workplace, our communities, our homes a better place? Are we doing better for the people around us? And, that's not just like a once a year audit thing. Like that's should be a daily audit. Like, are you leaving the place that you're at better, right? Your gym. Do you clean up after yourself? Are you, making people around you better? Are you having conversations with people? Are you sharing your knowledge? Like all this stuff does matter, guys. And um, it's been something that's just weighing on me, like our lack of sharing, our lack of adopting technology, but bitching about that we can't find people. Well, are you actually trying to hire people? Are you improving the people around you? Are you making them better? Or do you just want to hire a 10, a unicorn, a guy that can do everything, run your business, and you go sit on the beach, right? You're not going to find that. You're not going to find that guy. Even if you do, like, so now you're a schlep. Now you're not a producer anymore. You're a leech on society. Come on, man. Like, you're better than that. So let's keep working. Let's keep empowering the people around us. Let's keep getting better on a day by day basis. And yeah, sometimes it's a grind. It's a suck. And like, I'm learning this the hard way. I've jumped from company to company in the past, thinking that it would get better. That nobody was listening to me. Maybe some of that was true. Maybe it wasn't. Definitely, moving to where I was a discipline director, like I wasn't going to get that opportunity. So I don't regret that move. And so, a lot of this is, there is a grind. There's a period of grinding of like suck of getting it through of, enduring and pushing on a day by day basis and, making sure that we're talking to the right people, making sure that we're having conversations with the right people that can move the needle in our business, right? Not complaining to the wrong people, that can't do anything about it. And these things are important. And we just need to keep empowering and lifting people up around us. You know, keep working, keep grinding, keep doing it, lifting people up on a daily basis. And sure, man, like there is a time to just enjoy your life and retire and whatnot. But I'm not one of those kinds of guys to probably ever retire, right? I want to keep working, keep improving, keep, giving to the community and people around me on a regular basis. That's why you see, the only people that are in like Rotary and all these clubs are old people because one, they've got time, two, they're giving back to their communities. They work their careers and now, instead of work in a company and giving back, they're doing it in other ways. And I think we could do a lot of this, simultaneously and, give to our organizations, do things in our communities. But even if we just, help to improve the knowledge base within the construction industry and help pass that along, that would go a long way. So I know this is a rant, guys. I know I'm pretty pumped up about it. I just see a lot of people. It's hoarding. It's not giving, and we want to believe that we're good people and doing good in the world. And sure, but you're doing your job. You're not doing anything above and beyond that. You're not going the extra mile. Um, you're not helping the community at large. You're probably not training people really well in your organization. You're not giving back to them. And I want to just see more of it, and even if it is in your organization, share that story, right? Like, I really want to see that. I hope that, we share more of our stories throughout and, core values, everything that like Matt lives by in his company, but again, training at its core of our people, the industry as a whole is something that we're severely lacking, right? We need more critical thinkers, more people to be able to solve tough problems that we have in our industry, more people to do the outside the box things and get rid of this very basic, time consuming suck that just, I think, frankly, makes a lot of our people just worse. You're now taking engineers and putting them in menial tasks. It's not like we were hand drafting back in the day and you took basically artists into architecture firms to do these drawings. Now you're taking engineers and making them drafters. You're going down the ladder, if you will. You're not empowering and moving them up, right? You're not taking an entry level engineer, and in 4 years, because we have this technology known as BIM, and now if you start to automate the drafting and allow them to do more circuiting, more engineering, more critical thinking, more stuff, that in 4 years they could be a senior engineer. Like, why isn't that from school to 4 years? Why can't they be senior engineers? Like, why not? Right? And it's this type of thinking, these types of reps that we need to be able to give our people, our engineers, our talent to allow them to move forward. So, guys, again, improve your communities, be better about that, and we'll talk to you next time.
And while you're at it, just go to the show. Thanks, guys. Talk to you later.